didn't want to stay, and I did evacuate. And those that didn't, with Helene, certainly left town this time.
Yeah, you just wonder, without Helene, would they have done so? And then you got the word out, and they followed that. I'm curious, it's such a beautiful neck of the woods. I know the island quite well, and I always wonder, in this beautiful area, and there's a threat of something like this anywhere in Florida, anywhere in the southeast with storms like that. Do some people say, I just can't deal with this anymore? I'm tired of it.
Yeah, that has happened with every storm that we've had. And we've lost a lot of our full-time residences. At this point, our city is about 80% vacation rental. Huh. So folks come for a week or two, they have a good time, they enjoy the beach, and then they leave. And it's the property owner's responsibility, obviously, when they're left behind. So, yes, there's an awful lot of people who have cashed in, left the island. We've lost a tremendous amount of our population.
Yeah, this always puts a pause in all of that. Mayor, be well. Your folks be strong, and they always are. But thank you very much for taking the time.
And thank you for taking the time.
We want to update you on a couple of other Florida developments as the state tries to get back to normal. Tampa Airport is set to fully reopen tomorrow. Orlando Airport is essentially at near that stage right now. Disney World plans on reopening tomorrow, but a number of its other hotels and accommodations like Disney Fort Wilderness, a resort and campground, Treehouse Villas, Saratoga Spring Resort, they will remain closed at least through Sunday. We are separately learning now that this has reverberations across not only Florida but the Southeast. More than 2,700 flight cancellations today and tomorrow so far. And it does spread way beyond this region, because if you are waiting for a plane that has to come from that region to get to you, that plane is stuck. So this spreads to even flight connections in the Southeast, all the way out in our hub and spoke system that we call our air system. So delays are now pretty much the rule of thumb, but a lot of people hope to be back to normal, with most of the Florida airports back to running, up and running tomorrow. More to this. Most of the state's airports, they're trying to get opened up. It could prove a lot easier said than done. In Tampa, that airport is expected to be up and running fully tomorrow. Don't know the details of that, but I bet this next fellow will. John Tiliakos is the Tampa International Airport Executive Vice President of Operations, Customer Service. Talk about a pressure job. John, good to have you. What's the situation for your fine airport tomorrow?
Well, good afternoon, Neil. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so the storm blew through last night, and we sustained some damage to the airport, albeit more cosmetic damage. We dodged a bullet with this storm. We didn't get the storm surge that we were initially expecting to get. So we've got some cosmetic damage to some of our jet bridges, our fuel system. We've got some water intrusion into the terminal, but the team is out finishing up a damage assessment, and we expect to be ready to go by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Perhaps one of our biggest challenges is making sure we get the staff back. We have more than 10,000 employees here, and many of those were under a mandatory evacuation order. And so we believe we'll have ample staffing to restart the operation at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Yeah, you just read my mind, because I thought that a lot of them, depending on the community, John, are told to shelter in place, so they can't come in even if they wanted to. I don't know how many that would be, or how many of your workers that would be, but that could be disrupted.
Sure, very much so. So we have a good sense that many of the employees are able to return tomorrow. And in fact, we may very well start asking the airlines to reposition their aircraft tonight, ferry aircraft in, so they're here for tomorrow morning.
We hear about these 2,700 various flight, cancellations, probably 1,000 more delays and all that, and that's natural. But it's getting those flights back up and everyone back to where they want to be that proves the devil of the detail here. How is that process going?
Yeah, so we've been holding coordination calls with all of our stakeholders: the airlines, the TSA, the FAA, all of the key players that it takes to keep an airport such as this running effectively and efficiently. And we have a good read from our airline partners and others that they will have their employees back for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm just wondering now, you've been through this before. The Tampa has never been a direct or quasi-direct hit like it has now in the better part of a century. But is it making some of your workers, others say, as I was mentioning with a sheriff a couple of minutes ago, John, that love Florida, but I can't keep putting up with this?
No, I'll tell you, people that live here, Neil, love living here.
Absolutely.
Lots of people love Florida, and so we have a very resilient workforce here at TPA. And I will tell you, as an airport operator, we plan for a myriad of contingencies, from severe weather to aircraft emergencies. You name it, we've got a plan for it. And we always do our best to be prepared.
We talk about all the people who've come to your fine state. Full disclosure here, I have a little place in your beautiful state. But I'm one of the Northerners who can drive in your state and not embarrass you folks. But I am worried. A lot of new, transplants to your state, and whether it's at Tampa or the surrounding areas, this is new to them, and they're getting kind of shocked by this. What do you tell them?
Yeah, well, I will tell you, some of them are quite shocked by this, but I think the benefits of living in a state like Florida, when you talk to many of them, far outweigh some of the risks that we face with storms such as what we had with Milton.
Yeah, I always remind them, Don, come here in February, and I don't think you'll be saying that. But I wish you well, and everyone else. I mean, that's a lot to handle, John. You seem to be handling it with a good attitude, much like everyone in Florida, even those who aren't used to this. John Tiliakos, the Tampa International Airport Executive Vice President, as he said, they're going to reopen for business tomorrow. All the airports on staggered schedule. I mentioned Disney World is going to open tomorrow. There are going to be some facilities closed. We are understanding that SeaWorld, Universal, will do the same. The Titanic Museum also is going to open tomorrow, which seems like a bit of an oxymoron today, but just so you would know everything that is happening right now. So far, pretty good coordination in all of these states, whether they're run by Republicans or Democrats. There's been a real sense of camaraderie to get through this. Not some crazy political stuff back and forth. But we'll get the read on all of that with the Transportation Secretary of the United States. With his stance, Pete Buttigieg, he is coming up. We'll also tell you about what they're worried about now and future storms after this. And most of them on the East Coast through lightning and other storms and tornadoes that popped up there and very unexpectedly. Also should tell you that about 3 million are still without power. That is still down from 4 million. But as Governor DeSantis was saying a short time ago, as bad as things are and are looking right now for many, many people, it's not the worst case scenario. We'll continue to follow that, as is Steve Harrigan in Tampa, Florida now with more. Steve.
Neil, the numbers do keep changing, some getting better, some worse. That death toll stands at least at 10 so far, and as you mentioned, half of those coming from tornadoes spawned at the edge of the storm, really, on the other coast of where this hurricane originally hit. So at least 10 dead right now. And we've had more than 350 rescues, according to the Governor, Ron DeSantis. Many of those rescues carried out by first responders as soon as the winds died down enough for them to go out and work. Also 9,000 National Guard soldiers in operation, but also, and we've heard this anecdotally as well, a lot of civilians just saving people who they could in their trucks when people were in help. As for the electricity, pre-positioning 50,000 linemen here has really made a dent in that problem. Down from over 4 million, right now stands at 3.2 million people without electricity. And we've seen that go down time after time in Florida storms, goes down dramatically and quickly. As far as things reopening, you mentioned several. Also keep in mind I-4, that main corridor across the middle of the state, now back open. I-75 north-south as well. So roads like this were underwater, under 2 feet of water this morning. Now they're open and running. So it's time to clean up, time to get back to work for a lot of Floridians, Neil.
And depending on where they are, Steve, have to kind of shelter in place. I mean, a lot of people itching to look back and see how their property's held up, but they can't. How many are getting frustrated by that process?
It is hard for a lot of people. A lot of people's cars, especially in the neighborhood I'm in, got ruined by more than 18 inches of rain, which produced flooding. So people without their cars, we've seen them really walking back and forth, sometimes carrying plastic bags with belongings. A really tough situation for a lot of people who have to get to their job by car and now can't do it. Also, gas stations out. This one's out, boarded up, partially flooded, no gasoline. So some real challenges ahead in the short term.
Do you know or have a count? I mean, many were told to evacuate, obviously, and particularly on the Gulf side, that how many did that? And because of Helene, we're told a lot more did because they learned from that. Don't mess around.
I think Helene did scare a lot of people, and just anecdotally from our position in downtown Tampa, it was a ghost town. People really took this seriously. You couldn't get a seat on a flight out. And we did see massive traffic jams on the way out, heading north out of Florida. So people did leave. They were afraid of this storm.
Thank you, Steve, very much. Steve Harrigan in Tampa, Florida. With us now, the U.S. Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg. Secretary, good to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
It sounds like it could have been a lot worse. To quote Governor DeSantis, it was bad, but not the worst case scenario. Some relief with that. But, man, quite a repair job to go through, right?
That's right. This is a major impact. Thankfully, some of the worst case scenarios that we were preparing for yesterday did not come to pass. And I do think that people paying attention to those evacuation calls probably saved a lot of lives. But we do see a lot of impacts, whether we're talking about roads, airports, or ports. And right now we've been working closely with Florida's DOT to support their work to address that. Last I heard, FDOT's got about 150 people out doing inspections. Now, the interstates are up and running. The major bridges in and out of Tampa also up and running, including the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. There are, though, some smaller roads or bridges that still need attention. Or, sometimes you'll have a road or a bridge that looks okay to the naked eye, but after it's been submerged or impacted by a storm, you need to check it out to make sure that it's in good shape. So that's exactly the kind of work that's going on. Airports, as you've reported, including Tampa, either opening or on the road toward opening. FAA is going to do everything we can to help with that. And then watching the ports very closely, especially Port Tampa Bay, which is so important really to the whole state of Florida. A lot of optimism there that it can be brought back online in short order, but many steps need to happen first to make sure that it's safe to do so.
There were always some, and in every hurricane and storm, you see this, Secretary, so I'm far from critical of this, but a lot of gasoline stations running out of fuel. The governor, was trying to address that, said it wasn't for lack of fuel, but finding the man and the power to get that to them. And a lot of these are contractors who had other obligations and they were spread thin. But bottom line, it couldn't be addressed. And even to this hour, sir, we still have problems getting fuel to those stations. Is that, with every storm, we find some logistical wrinkle that has to be ironed out for future storms. What have you learned from this one?
Yeah, that's certainly something that can happen. It's happened in this case, and as the governor indicated, it seems that this was less a matter of the supply chains being disrupted and more a matter of the spikes in demand that were created by everybody getting ready or being concerned about what might happen. Then you look at the gas stations; some of them may be closed or damaged directly. Some of them not damaged, but still waiting on that supply to come through. As I understand it, the state has taken efforts to provide police escorts and other ways to help tanker trucks get in, and of course, the sooner that can be rebalanced, the better. But again, one bit of good news here. Port Tampa Bay accounts for about 40% of the liquid fuel coming into the state of Florida. So if they had taken a direct hit, if that had damaged or destroyed the terminals or the docks, that could have been a major impact to Florida's ability to get fuel. As it stands, at least the preliminary indications that I've heard, just speaking recently to the Florida Secretary of Transportation, it sounds like there was not that kind of impact. And of course, they're going through now to make sure things like buoys and navigational aids are there. Coast Guard will be in charge of certifying that it's safe. But, the initial indications are that the port will be in good shape. And that's a real relief if you're concerned about those fuel supply lines coming in to serve the people of Florida.
Knowing you were coming, Secretary, I was wondering, given the uniqueness of these last two hurricanes, in this area, Helene and obviously Milton, they were big, powerful storms, but their real danger was, in the storm surge and some of the other issues that followed, the tornadic activity and the rest. And it reminded me that some of our most lethal storms ended up not being high category dangerous storms like Sandy, a superstorm back in my home state of New Jersey, but obviously did untold damage, one of the most expensive of all time. Helene wasn't expected to be as big a deal as it was for points north of Florida, but it led to obviously flooding and the rest in North and South Carolina. Nothing new to you. But do we have to now sort of recalibrate how we address the severity of the storm and the potential fallout?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, as you noted, goes to looking beyond a simple measure like what category the storm is. That tells you the wind speed, but that didn't really tell you what was going to come in terms of the tornadoes that it spawned or the storm surge, which can often be the deadliest thing. Also, and the governor in Florida has pointed this out, often with a storm, many of the deaths or injuries come afterwards as you have down power lines, people going into water that might have bacteria that can lead to fatal infections, things that you don't necessarily think of as the moment of the impact of the storm, but are certainly part of the danger. You add to that the fact that, in Florida, people, of course, are very experienced dealing with storms. But, if you're in the mountains of Appalachia, hurricanes are not always something that you've been hearing about or told to prepare for. So I think the best we can do in these situations is to try to be there in advance. We've tried to pre-position personnel, both going to Helene and also going to Milton. For example, FAA put a field incident response team in place in Jacksonville before the storm hit, so that after the storm hit, they could be out helping with the process of getting the runways and the towers and everything inspected to get those airports back online. Look, the bottom line is we are clearly going to see more frequent, more severe storms hitting the United States. We got to be ready, not just in terms of our emergency management practices, and I got to say, I'm really inspired and impressed by the work I've seen both locally and in the federal agencies to respond to that. But also, it's a matter of how we design and build our infrastructure. We've got to recognize that if a 100-year flood is becoming something that happens all the time, and your road keeps getting washed out, we shouldn't be requiring some community to put the road back the exact same way over and over again. We should be helping them move it to higher ground, and that's one thing we're doing more and more with our funds.
But we also get a lot of misinformation, don't we? We get people who say in North Carolina that if you're a Republican, you're not going to get help. If you're a Democrat, you'll get help. I would imagine that does a huge disservice to people working together and scares the bejesus out of others when they believe it.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I worried about the false claim that was going on, for example, that had people believing that if you got $750 in immediate help, that you were never going to get anything else. What if somebody hears that, they believe it, and then they don't apply for more aid that they could absolutely qualify for? So, there are real costs and real consequences to that misinformation. But I also want to say, for the most part, we've seen a lot of responsible actors on both sides of the aisle saying that there's no place for that misinformation. I've been on the phone with Senator. I was talking to Senator Rubio and in touch with Senator Rubio and talking to Senator Scott and talking to mayors, governors of the states impacted by Helene. You would never know from the conversations we're having which ones were Republicans and which ones were Democrats. When I was talking to the FDOT secretary, you would never know that his boss and my boss belonged to opposite political parties. Right now, you got a lot of people pulling together, working to get the job done for people, regardless of how you voted, just based on what you need.
Well, Donald Trump said that about North Carolina. Republicans not getting help, Democrats getting help. That was Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I think that's really unfortunate because it's just not true. Look, we've got thousands of people in all of the areas that have been affected, and that's just the federal response alone. And, whether we're talking about somebody from the military who's been deployed to help, or somebody from our Federal Highway Administration, they're not checking whether they're in a red county or a blue county. They're checking what's going on with the bridges and who needs comms help and what the immediate needs are and how we can be helpful. So look, I get it's October. I get there's a lot of politics going on, but what has inspired me is to see so many people working together across different lines, including the state, federal, county lines that are out there, tearing down barriers, getting rid of red tape, because everybody has a job to do.
Well said. All right, Secretary, very good seeing you again. Pete Buttigieg. Just want to allude to something that Transportation Secretary kindly pointed out on these monies that you get from FEMA. That $750 was money up front for people who can't access ATM machines, that kind of thing. So it wasn't just a one-shot, that's it. It's a way for people to get hands on cash they desperately need, not the only money they will ever get or hope to get. But that kind of misinformation gets out there. And whether it's perpetrated by a politician or someone you think is of someone of note and authority, it is wrong and it is bull and it cannot be tolerated. A little more into this.